You're listening to ABA On Call, hosted by myself, Rick Kubina, and Doug Kostewicz. This is your front row seat to the future of behavior analysis. Join us for fresh ideas, practical strategies, and bold conversations designed to inspire action. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to ABA On Call. You are experiencing with us the first episode of a new season. Doug, it's season 7. Where does the time go? That's my question. Literally, where does the time go?
Usually goes into the past, from what I understand. But other than that, it's exciting to be here in season 7. First episode, real cool. I'm looking forward to this topic today. I think it's funny.
Yeah, let's waste no time. Let's just jump right into it. We're going to talk about something that I will bet everybody has had experience with in one way or another, and that is cheating. And when I say cheating, however you define that term is probably close to what we mean. When we talk about cheating, well, here's a fun fact, Doug. The very first book I ever wrote, there was a publishing company called ProEd. In ProEd, they had these little mini series, and you would write these mini books. And I mean, it was a book, but it was the book that I wrote was called How to Effectively Deal with Lying, Cheating, and Stealing. So I've talked about cheating in the past, and this was written for teachers, but cheating can take many forms. So let's just start off and talk about, if we define cheating and we look at it as a phenomena that clearly is a behavior, it's not too hard to figure out, why does this occur? If someone were going to ask you, why do people cheat? What is the simple behavioral answer?
Well, I know you want to say it's simple, but I was really thinking about this when you said, hey, let's talk about cheating. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of different angles to think about, because immediately you think to like a game. You're playing a game and you rolled something and something bad's going to happen. So maybe you rolled a die and 6 is bad. So you kind of, hey, look over there, and everybody turns and looks, and you flip it to 5, and then something good happens. So, it's like, well, I'm trying to, quote, win, or I'm trying to, quote, avoid some negative outcome given the game I'm playing. And that's really a simple kind of look at, hey, this is cheating. There are certain rules, that I'm not following because the rules are putting me in a place where maybe I don't win. Maybe bad things happen. Maybe I can't talk a lot of smack over the next holiday when I'm with the family. So, I mean, it seems like it can be an avoiding thing, but it can also be a winning or earning, like I'm getting something out of it. So, I mean, cheating can happen for either reason. That was what was mulling over in my mind when I was thinking about cheating.
I should have started off with the definition of cheating. And here's the definition of cheating: to act dishonestly or unfairly in order to gain advantage, especially in a game or an examination. So that's the first definition of cheating. And our definitions are polysemous, meaning they have many different definitions. And your response, I think, fits in very well with what's happening. Someone is acting in a way to gain an advantage, and they're doing it unfairly. My initial take on this, and this is what I wrote in the book, you tell teachers, okay, let's say you have a student who's cheating. You do some kind of functional analysis, because if you're well, of course, this is for stealing and lying, like this all fits into that. But why do people do things? It all boils down to one of the principles of behavior, and that is reinforcement. And we all are constantly trying to maximize our reinforcers in life. And that's okay. That's part of being human. And as a culture, we in this is very culturally specific, because in other cultures where we talk about cheating, it's a little bit different. For example, we'll talk about this later. We're going to talk about, in our next section, we're going to highlight sports and leisure instances of cheating, and the third one we'll talk about in academics. But cheating in our culture is frowned upon in many aspects. And if you would look at a very simple example of a child that, let's say, cheats on an exam, what are they doing? Well, maybe they have the old, remember, you put the notes in your, you write them on.
I wouldn't remember,
You
but
wouldn't
I've
remember.
heard of that happening.
Other
I've
kids
heard
do
of that
that.
happening.
You remember that.
Right, right.
They would write their
I
little
remember
note,
them. Mhm.
oh, reinforcement is blah, 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 blah. And then you
Mhm.
slyly look at your thing, and then you write the answer. Uh, so what are you getting? You go back to reinforcement, and you can look at this in two ways. When we talk about grades, why do people uh, want to get grades? Some people will say, oh, well, it's so you can earn that grade, and it's delayed, and you get this grade, and it's your behavior is positively reinforced. Whereas other people say, no, it's escape, and you're trying to avoid these negative things. But either way, it falls into reinforcement, and you're doing something, and it's either for type 1 or type 2, or positive and negative reinforcement, however you want to use those terms. So that's what I meant by pulling it back and looking at this in a very simple behavioral view.
And I think when you look at reinforcement, okay, so then you step back, you have a whole bunch of other aspects of how cheating proliferates, right? So you've got instances of observational learning, right? We didn't actually do the cheating. We watched the other people who got away with the cheating. And then we said, well, maybe I can try this myself, because they didn't interact with any type of negative consequences. They got the reinforcement. So I want to try. So you see how observate, and then you see the people who succeeded. How did they get there? Well, I can't do what they do. So what are some ways for me to game the system so that I can access some of the same gains that they have? So it's, understanding why one individual cheats, like you said, it comes down to interacting with reinforcement, whether it's positive or negative. And then you see the proliferation of that via a variety of different ways, as this, even though the culture frowns on it, if you've done a good enough job cheating, as with lying and stealing, if you don't get caught, then that just reinforces it even more. So you
Yeah.
can see this in it's almost like our culture is anti getting caught cheating. It's not anti cheating.
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, it's all gamesmanship. It's all and we'll talk about these variety of worlds, but it's we don't like it when the person gets caught. Even if there's an insinuation, it's okay until you can prove it, right? So you can take it that first level of what's maintaining the individual's behavior, but then you look at how is this proliferating through our system. And I think that is how we get to these larger stories that you insinuated that we're going to be talking about. It's not just an individual, it's that individual within a society that they see it gets picked up. You see all these other contingencies working around it. So I mean, it's easy to say it, like you said, I want it whatever Candyland because I hid the 6 roll instead of the 5 roll, but it's way past that when we're thinking about cheating on a larger scale.
Yeah. Love the reference to Candyland.
Yep.
You're as I'm reflecting on what you were saying, that does support earlier your contention that this is complex. You brought in, I pulled it back to just simply principles of reinforcement, but you're adding in rule governance there. And we definitely operate under rules, and we can learn all sorts of, like, I just think about so many things that flood my mind, which is, or my verbal repertoire. And that is, we in the past, people wouldn't necessarily admit to cheating, but now some people are actually proud of it and will be like, oh yeah, like I can think of people talking about cheating on their taxes, where in the past it's like, oh, you cheated. But now some people are like, oh yeah, I use the system, and there are these things in there, and they're actually bragging about cheating on their taxes and other places. And sure, that can advantage you, but if everyone starts cheating, there becomes a price to pay, and systems are set up, and game rules and all these things, because when you act in this particular manner and there's some kind of outcome, you can understand very clearly how that outcome was achieved, and all the reinforcers are lying there. But once you start bending the rules, those have effects, whether it's through simple gains or whether it's through these complex issues like the tax code, or whatever else you want to put in there.
Well, I think that brings us to our first secret word. And that secret word is hidden. Hidden.
Let's talk about our second section, and let's get into some examples, prolific examples of cheating. Yep. And all of us have known and seen people that have cheated. Maybe we've engaged in it ourselves. I mean, if you're a human, maybe you've done something when you were a kid or whatever, and you think about cheating, they can be small little instances, or they could be really big things. And we're going to talk about some big things. And you and I were doing some research for this, and we're throwing back lots of stories, and we could have picked 1,000 stories because it's on the news. And this first section we'll call sports and leisure, and we have one example of sports. One example, I guess, we'll put in there with leisure. And let's talk about the sports story. So this first story is with a famous athlete named Alex Rodriguez. And if any of you follow baseball, Alex Rodriguez was a very famous baseball player. He played for the Yankees, was the last team. And back when the scandal started in baseball, which was with Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, all these guys who in the 80s and 90s were setting these, Bobby Bonds. Barry Bonds, excuse me. I was thinking Bobby Bonds, his player.
Dad.
Yeah, that's a dad.
Yeah.
Well, you can see that where my mind is. But at any rate, people started juicing, which means they were taking steroids. And all of a sudden, there's all these records in baseball that for years had stood the test of time, like the home run record, and they were just being routinely eclipsed. And of course, these guys all later admitted to cheating. And the cheating that they engage in was taking these anabolic steroids, which have all sorts of effects. Like they can make you recover faster. They can bulk you up. They do things that if other people aren't taking those steroids, then they don't have those advantages. And as a result, this really affected their career. But now, Alex Rodriguez got caught, but he was sort of a little bit after. And of course, now more and more time, people are getting caught for doing this all the time, but it doesn't have that impact. And the story that we have is very prominent because, again, let's go back to the definition: acting dishonestly in order to gain an advantage. They're doing something that is against the rules. You're not allowed to take steroids, Doug, when you play these sports, but they were doing it. And then even Barry Bonds, when they called him later, would defend himself, and he never was apologetic. He'd say things like, well, it's not, it's just, he talked about it, how it was okay to cheat, and rationalize it because, he still had to have eye-hand coordination. He still had to do all these things. And I'm paraphrasing his excuses, but this was a pretty big deal. And now we have this recent story about Alex Rodriguez, who's saying, look, everybody was doing it. And that's the big thing here.
So this gets back to, it is a more complex thing, right? What are the advantages of cheating these individuals? Big time contracts. These aren't just winning a game, right? In fact, very few of them won the big game, right? won the World Series, but they were getting huge contracts. Alex Rodriguez was the first like $250 million man over 10 years, played for the Mariners, played for the Texas Rangers. This was all occurring supposedly during his time there, that he was getting older and he wanted. So you have a situation where all through the 90s, this was getting approved, right? There was no, Major League Baseball was making huge money off all these people juicing, right? And then they had all the Senate things and Palmero's crying and make Mark McGuire's up there, but then they get caught. Then they get a situation where I've seen all this. I want to, and you hit on some other things. It's avoiding pain. It's avoiding, I can still play at a certain level faster. 162 games over 180 days is a lot of baseball. It's wear and tear over 20 years, right? I know we think about that as just a game, but you can't, it's not that way anymore. I mean, the higher performance, what's required of your body. So you've got this situation where he saw it, he denied it until he could no longer deny it. He was then given the out. He was given permission to, you tell us what happened and we won't hold you accountable. And he was able to say everything he needed to say. And so when you remove the consequences of cheating, then those aren't there. So he outed as many people as he could, outed the whole system. And of course, everybody's upset. But you can see how cheating, it helped a lot of people, including the people that weren't cheating, the teams, the television rights. And so then what happens is, but once the cheaters were identified, they're no longer in the Hall of Fame, right? They're no longer allowed. Bonds is never getting in. McGuire's not getting in. They're not going to vote them in because they, quote, cheated. But where were they all those other times through their career? Because Alex Rodriguez was a generational talent until he wasn't.
Right.
So you've got this situation where it's very valuable to them in the moment. And then these delayed situations it's crashing and burning. But when you have $1 billion sitting in the bank, oh no, I don't get to be in the Hall of Fame. Maybe you weigh those two. It's not as big a deal. I don't know.
Yeah. We can talk about this a lot, but you always go back to reinforcement and why are people acting like you mentioned. Barry Bonds making $250 million. Just recently, a baseball player, Juan Soto for the Mets, he had what is it, like a $750 million contract?
Yep.
15 years. And you look at these dollars, and the temptation is so great to be good for so long, and it's very clear why people are doing what they're doing. But let's switch to our other story. And that first story was about sports, and I guess we'll call this the second one leisure. I don't know what I would classify it, but this is yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say this is it's still cheating as it's following the definition of whatever those rules, right? So this is a story about David Grohl,
Right.
And how he has a long-standing history of infidelity, which means that he engaged in sexual activities with women outside of marriage, which in this case it was women. What's that?
Acting dishonestly.
Acting dishonestly, and so whatever those rules are, right? So the rules of marriage, I'm not saying that people can't have open marriages or do anything, but
Sure.
given this, the people, so he has fathered children outside, he has children in his marriage. So we look at this. So this is another of those definitions of cheating, right? You're cheating on a spouse.
Right.
And so you look at behavior analytically, what's going on? And because technically what's available in a relationship, it would also be available out there, right? So why it's not like a famous rock star is getting more money like that baseball player, or it's not like he's getting more well known for this. So talk to me a little bit about, what do you think some of the motivating factors here? What are the reinforcers working for David Grohl, who has this documented history, he's admitted to it, of all these extramarital affairs?
Yeah. Well, having sex is a primary reinforcer, and that seems to be straightforward here, at least in my opinion. Of course, there's a lot more. When people have relationships, sex is a driving factor, but it's certainly not the only one. There are we have relationships, deep relationships with people, and there's all sorts of complex situations that if we look at reinforcement histories and what's happening, many people have. I'm going to assume almost everyone has been in a relationship. Most people have relationships, and cheating. When you cheat, there is, again, these are cultural things in our culture. Um, a big part of having a relationship, unless, like you were implying earlier, there are
Yeah.
some relationships you can have that are open, and then there's not this monogamy that you agree to. But clearly, in Dave Grohl's case, that's not what the wife signed up for. So he was married
Right.
twice, and in both times, he was a cheater. And this shocked people when it came out, because Dave Grohl's a good guy. Uh, has this reputation as a good guy, and speaks out, does lots of causes, and it was just very surprising that you would see this instance of cheating uh, happening. But we're not picking on Dave Grohl. There are
No.
literally thousands. I mean, there are magazines like People and other places where if you want to see who's cheating today, like every day there's someone, some celebrity or some famous person. We could pick in politics. We could pick anywhere. If there's
Right.
humans, this is what happens, and it's very common, and it is certainly another example of cheating.
Yes, but I think the important thing here is that first thing is really easy, right? Access to money and fame, right?
Yeah.
With the baseball players. It doesn't see, he has the money and fame. It's not there the same. So there's still cheating, this cheating behavior occurring. And it's important to show that it's not just about money, fame for doing these. It could be difference. It could be um, simply the act of cheating can be reinforcing, right? Doing those types. So it's showing that this is it's not just necessarily about winning. When you original definition of game, winning, I'm trying to do something to get advantage. It's harder to see the advantage here. It seems, because he had to come out on Instagram. I'm now working to rebuild my honesty and trustfulness. And if you look at the history, this has been happening for a long time. So it's interesting to see a simple term such as cheating being maintained by such very different things.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to our second secret word, which is valley.
I think we got a good run here. I think this last one is probably near and dear to our hearts. Both of us are in academia. We
Yep.
both we both have a history of working with pre-service educators. They're eventually going to be teachers.
Yep.
So these two stories kind of hit us on both angles, the academic as well as the teacher side of situation. So the first one I'm going to go with is, there's two slightly related, but I think it's important to notice the difference, teacher stories. And so there is an older story from Georgia where teachers were found guilty of changing test scores of students for monetary gain, right? So that's one story. And the second one was these teachers in Texas. Entire systems were found where teachers were having other people take their certification exams, and they were then practicing educators in a multitude of school districts. So, Rick, dig around in those for me right here. You got two very, very similar in the sense that both are teachers, both are working with kids, but very different kind of cheating going on there.
Yeah. You follow the trail of reinforcement, and what does it take you to? The having someone sit in and take your exam, which this was brazen. There were they caught 100 teachers. There's more than that, where someone comes in, takes the exam for you because either you can't pass or you just want to have a guarantee that someone is going to be able to take this for you and pass. And what do you get from that? Well, if you have someone that passes your exam, to be a teacher, the pre-service is you're an undergrad, you get that degree, you have to pass this certification exam. Otherwise, you cannot practice. And that's not just teaching. There's many fields like that. And if you can't practice, you can't work. And if you can't work, the whole reason why you're engaging in all of the time you spent being a student is for naught. And that seems to be pretty clear. The person that is taking the test for you, they're getting paid. They're getting some kind of value. And the other thing that's, I think, disturbing about the story is it seems like, oh, this is a low stakes thing and they're just finding this now. But teaching has been under assault for quite some time. And now here's this ugly story saying that people are already criticizing teachers and for all sorts of different reasons. And now there's this scandal where the people who are supposed to want what's best for the students, who are supposed to be going to school, doing all these things, and then passing the bar, showing, look, I have my chops. I have this basic understanding of these concepts that I passed this test. That's not the case. So from that,
let me jump in on that. Let me jump in. I'm going to interrupt you because I think it's also an interesting variable is these. So people do kind of look at this, say, you know what? What's the big deal? Because we can't get enough teachers in some of these schools. We need people to come do this. And so, come on. I'm not saying that people are defending this, but there's probably people silently saying, come on, nobody wants the job in the first place. This isn't a desirable school. That's as though we're saying, hey, these kids are not worth it. These kids are not worth having a professional educator, someone who's valid. So there is, I'm guessing that there's other things in the system that are setting the stage for cheating. That is like, it's, you know what, it's okay. Come on. We need people. We have a deficit of teachers. There's a lot of teachers that I know that are still looking for jobs, but that's neither here nor there. Now go into the one about changing test scores for kids.
Yeah. Well, let's quickly talk about that other study.
Oh yeah,
which is the Atlanta cheating scandal.
Yeah, I was just gonna say now this is a very different. So you have a certified educator who's now changing scores.
Yeah, right. And they weren't the only one to do this. You've seen these stories in other places. There was the Texas Miracle, which was cheating. There was this in Georgia, which was Atlanta. And it happened, in 2015? And the issue was that there were these contingencies put in place where there are certain scores, and these scores are a benchmark. And if your school does not perform well enough, there could be significant financial implications. You might not get as much funding. And as a result, there is an incentive for your school to meet those scores. And the people who impose these high stakes regulations, put them in there because the schools, the scores from the students weren't rising to the level of
Right.
showing that these students were learning what they needed to learn. And as a result, how do they get that better? Well, we'll attach funding to it, and that will inspire the teachers to dig down, the administrators or whomever, to buy better curricula. But instead, what these folks did is said, you know what? We're not going to do those things. We're just going to cheat on the scores, so it looks like our kids are doing better. And this was like this widespread. There were racketeering charges because this was the superintendent. These were principals. These were teachers. And all these people colluded across all these districts so that they could have this gain. They were acting very dishonestly, and of course, the advantage was that their folks would do well. So, from a large meta contingency, you can explain this. But if you looked at individual contingencies and said, "Well, why would one person be doing this? Why would people participate?" That's where you have to do some type of analysis of the person's behavior, see what specifically are they getting out of this.
And yeah, that you don't know each individual. You don't know the pressures that they were under from their administrators. You don't know everything, but you see, if I place something that's so valuable, people are not going to necessarily raise to do it. They're going to figure out a way around the corner to get there. And we've shown in history, you know, well, we're animals. We do the least to get the most, right? So,
That's right.
and then our last was really interesting. You actually cued me in on this one when we were talking about this. I'm gonna just introduce it a little bit. I want you to take it. So
Yeah.
here's an academic researcher, and there's, for us, academic dishonesty is a huge thing. I very, very anti anything regarding that. And so there's a person that does work on academic dishonesty. The actual topic is academic dishonesty, who was found allegedly to have faked their data.
Yeah.
How? And I'll give you one little, and I'll let you take it. They said somebody did it to me.
Yeah.
They faked my data and got in and messed with it to make it look like it was fake data because they were mad at the results that I found.
Yeah. So this is Francesca Gino, who is a award-winning researcher. She's at Harvard, and we'll say that this is alleged cheating because this is ongoing. And she works in business. And it's interesting because I read another article not too long ago that was pointing out other people that cheat, and almost saying like a lot of the things you read about business psychology is almost all trash. And so many, that's what this article was saying. And I'm not speaking I'm not painting with a broad brush here, Doug, because I don't want to get in trouble with accusing people of things. But this particular article talked about how many people engage in juicing the numbers, so to speak. And this is exactly what happened here. Her topic was dishonesty, and it turned out that there was a group of people who said, "Hey, this looks a little bit funny here." This person had several articles that were written across 4 years, and in these 4 years, they looked at the data and they're like, "You know what? This can't be right." And when Harvard did this investigation, it was like a 1,300-page investigation, and they came out with like the only way, like you pointed out, she said, "No, I didn't do this," and the only way this could have happened, like someone would have had to go into her Qualtrics account. If for those of you who haven't heard that term, Qualtrics is a statistical thing, software where you use it. Uh, They'd have to have access to her Qualtrics. They'd have to have the numbers that they put in. That person would have to be there across these whole 8 years.
Understand the coding that she used for data.
Right.
I mean, there's so many things that that had to have happened for this not to be falsified data.
That's right. And you get back to it and say, well, why would a person like this do it? And what we were talking about earlier, Johnson and Pennypacker is a book we reference a lot. And in that very first chapter, they talk about us as behavior analysts, and we're no different from anyone else because we're humans. What drives you as a professor and what drives you as a researcher? There's all of these contingencies. I get fees for speaking at conferences. I get the accolades of, I don't always get paid. I'll go to conferences, and it's great. Someone recognizes you. You have publications. That's part of tenure. You have, you write books. You get paid for that. There's all these different ways of things that drive our behavior, and they're not necessarily bad. You just have to be aware that these things exist, and that's what's great about Johnson and Pennypacker, which really gets to no one's unbiased, but this is taking it up a notch. You're acting dishonestly. You're doing things that you should not be doing. Why? Because, you're at Harvard. That's an incredible, people live at Harvard as the highest, one of the most prestigious institutions of higher education that we have. So you can just imagine the rewards you get, everything that I just said, which is multiplied by a factor of times 10. You're in business, you're speaking, you're on the news, you're getting these incredibly rich consulting contracts. So you can see how the cheating that behavior could be reinforced.
And you got to keep the train going. So you can have some study 20 years ago that can make your name, but you need it again. You need it again. And science is always looking for what's going on now. So if something doesn't happen the way you want it, you can see the cracks for those. And we're humans. We're behaved. Just because we're behavior analysts does not put us above the contingencies.
Yeah.
So yeah, the is an interesting story. These are just four or five examples of so many you could find. And I think they all, like you said, they all distill down to reinforcement, but they can come out of left field, and you just cannot figure out why sometimes, because maybe you can't access what's maintaining that. You can't figure out exactly what that individual's history or what put them in that situation. But cheating is definitely out there. And, I said it earlier, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's like, you're not cheating until you're caught. Right. And that's more my cynical side getting in there. But, these are ones that are caught, and we don't like it when they're caught.
If you're a behavior analyst and you deal with cheating, and someone says, hey, we have this person who's a serial cheater, how do you fix it? You don't need to rely on some mentalistic theory. Just look at the basic principles of behavior analysis, and that's where you start. We are complex creatures. We do things for many reasons, but that's where you start. And our science continues to understand this complexity and why we do things. We talked about reinforcement, but there's also rule governance. There's all of these complex schedules of reinforcement. There's all these things that are going on, and that's all part of an analysis that you would do if you were caught cheating. That brings us to our last secret word, not hidden word. That was our first secret word, hidden. And the last word is ranch. Doug, this has been a very interesting topic to kick the season off with. And I don't know about you, but I say we keep going with these complex topics. Maybe this season the theme is complex human behavior, and how, as behavior analysts, do we understand these phenomena, these behaviors, and how would we respond to them if someone asks for our help?
Yep. And we hope to hear from you in the audience. Let us know your thoughts. If you've got questions, we'd love to hear from you.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us on ABA On Call.
Thank you for being part of ABA On Call. Want to grab your CEU? Just click the link in the instructions, complete the quiz, enter the secret words, and pay the fee to download your certificate. You've done the work, claim the credit. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.